Hi, it's me. This is my channel, and we're about to get spooky. In about a minute, I'm going to tell you the story of Sir John Franklin's doomed expedition, the one that led to cannibalism, desperate attempts to escape, and then decades of total mystery. But first, I want to talk about this. You might be familiar with stories like this one, or maybe you've heard of the podcast or the show. There was an obsession with the Northwest Passage, a sea route through the Arctic that would connect the Atlantic and Pacific. It seemed impossible, yet adventurers kept trying. Of course, modern GPS and ships have since revealed that the Northwest Passage does exist, just not in the way people thought. They were reinforced against the crushing pressure of the ice. They traveled across the Barents Sea, dodging storms and icebergs. By July, they reached the southern coast of Greenland. Then things got quiet. We don't know exactly what happened next, because the ships never returned. Our party, consisting of Captain Sir John Franklin, RN Lieutenant HJVE, RN. They each had a steam engine capable of producing 15 pounds of pressure to break through the ice. It said W. Farewell from HMS Erebus. April 26, 1848. And myself. Left the ships on march, being too late to establish a camp on board. Any who couldn't make it were killed and eaten. Had they successfully found the Northwest Passage or perished trying? Newspapers published rumors about survivors and mysterious disappearances. Tools were in the drawers, boots by the beds and plates stacked neatly in cupboards. It was like the crew had simply vanished into thin air. Some believed that the men had simply vanished into thin air. The crew's bones were found with cut marks indicating that cannibalism had taken place. Though many had hoped for a simpler explanation, the truth was far more grim. Theories spread like wildfire. Others claimed that Inuit tribes had attacked and eaten the crew, but none of these theories made sense. Only one, Thomas Blanket, told his story of the expedition. These men marched into the Arctic on a mission of discovery, but they left behind a legacy of unspeakable acts. It's a story of bravery and tragedy, of overconfidence and the will to survive. I've been your guide. If you want to learn more about the darkest journeys ever taken, stay tuned for more updates. Until next time, farewell. It's also a story of unimaginable horror. The remnants of their ships are a sobering reminder of their fate. Frozen in time, a silent testament to the unforgiving power of the Arctic. After the ships got stuck in the ice, he said the crew rationed their food and water until the supplies eventually ran out. That's when they started eating the tin containers. It caused everyone to become weak and sick. When they were too ill to continue the voyage, the stronger men killed them and ate them. Eventually, Blankets were too weak to keep moving, so he hid in a cave for several months. When he finally emerged, he was the only survivor. It was a horrifying reality, but it's one that has been documented in every account of the Franklin expedition. They were brought back to England, but they died shortly after. It wasn't until much later that the full extent of what had happened was uncovered. Having sledge parties to drag our boats ashore, we descended the coast to the westward. Having made a cairn on the summit of the highest land at the entrance of the straits to mark our position, on April we established this cairn and deposited our boats and baggage. Lieutenant DeVee, unwell, remained with me. The others proceeded down the coast. We're now proceeding southward. The next day, the entire group moved toward Beechey Island, 65 miles to the south. The rocks were covered in ice, making walking extremely difficult, but the men believed they would soon be safe. Unfortunately, that hope faded fast. Though the ships didn't appear abandoned, neither did they show any signs of life. By the time they reached the island, they were exhausted and starving. It was here that things really started to unravel. The men were freezing and starving. And when they searched for food, they found nothing but rotten meat. Things quickly went from bad to worse. Many of the men became too weak to move. And when they were discovered by the other members of the expedition, those men killed and ate them, including their leader, Sir John Franklin. The next day, Ross tried to hail the ships with a boat, but no one answered. But before they went, they left behind a list of the dead and a note describing what happened. The men who were still alive struggled to walk south to safety. They left behind their dead comrades and began the long trek through the ice and snow. When he looked through a spyglass, he could see that some of the crew were aboard. He even saw someone wave at him. But when he got closer, he realized that person was waving at the mate who was in a boat with him. They had mistaken him for a shipmate. They were packed with tinned food, which was revolutionary at the time. And they even had enclosed toilets. The ships were basically luxury hotels compared to what sailors were used to, and the men were confident they would succeed where others had failed. That doesn't change the fact that between 1846 and 1848, two ships named HMS Erebus and HMS Terror set off from England to try to find it. Well, now there's a companion podcast to the show. Ross and his crew weren't the first to come across the stranded sailors, but they were the first to leave alive. It's a spin-off hosted by yours truly. His journal recorded the last confirmed sightings of the Franklin expedition. Once he was out of range, he lit a bonfire on shore and fired a gun into the air. Each shot echoed over the ice and water. But when Ross turned away to light another, he saw one of the men who had been waving at him lying dead at his ship. It was clear that whoever fired back missed. The mission was commanded by Sir John Franklin, a veteran of Arctic exploration and a member of the Royal Navy. At the time, he was 55 years old. He had already had a respectable career, fighting in the Napoleonic Wars, exploring the coasts of Australia and New Zealand, and most famously, discovering the magnetic North Pole. The previous year, he'd been knighted for his work. And although the captaincy of the Franklin expedition came with more risk than any of his other missions, Franklin was eager to take it on. And every week we bring you a terrifying tale from human history, something that fits perfectly in the spooky season, but is also right up our alley. Let's go back to the 1840s and into the heart of the Arctic. If you love our videos, then you will love the podcast. Stories so scary they make you question everything, including the sanity of those who lived through them. I promise you'll learn something new while you scream yourself hoarse. New episodes drop every Thursday starting September. Subscribe now so you don't miss out on the first episode. And if you listen within the first week, you'll unlock an exclusive bonus episode that won't be available anywhere else. All right, let's do this. The crew of these ships consisted of 129 men, all of whom were volunteers. So we know they were brave and possibly a little crazy. These ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, were state-of-the-art. The ships sailed northwest out of Plymouth, England. It was August when American explorer James Ross found the two ships frozen in the ice off the coast of King William Island, 300 miles from the Canadian mainland. The discovery was a huge event. Items were found in pristine condition. After struggling to free his boat from the ice, Ross continued his journey west. In 1848, the ships were still trapped in the ice. But with only 10 men left alive, those men were forced to abandon ship. On April, they built a cairn, a pile of rocks marking their path, and left a message inside. There was no sign of civilization. After murdering Franklin, the men continued to travel south. For years, no one knew what had happened to the Franklin expedition. Then, in the early 2010s, both ships were discovered remarkably well preserved under the Arctic water. When researchers explored the ships, they also found evidence of the dark reality of what happened. Of the 129 men on the two ships, only 3 survived. So what happened to the rest? 3 men, Cornelius, Henry, and Thomas, were found by the expedition searching for Franklin. But they were suffering from severe lead poisoning. Today, the story of the Franklin expedition continues to fascinate experts and the public alike. Thank you for watching. And thank you for coming along on this journey into the frozen silence of the Arctic.